After years of being away from the spotlight, Marcia Lucas finally speaks out about Star Wars and mainly Disney Star Wars, and we have our first ever debate on if Disney ruined Star Wars or saved it. All that and more here on Chatooine. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Chatooine. I'm your host, Star Wars Only, joined with Darth Daddy Longa, the Goldman, and Palpa memes. It's been a minute since we were all together. Maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know. We took like a week off, but how have you guys been?
Life is happening. I'm good. All right.
There's 3 of us. You got to specify which one.
I know. Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, at this point, you guys just got to wing it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm used to when I don't hear anything, I usually jump in right away. But I noticed me and Palpa seem to bump into each other a lot of times when I do that. So I've like waited, and now he doesn't say anything.
We have that connection. I know. I'm waiting for you. I'm like, no, I'm gonna get you right.
We'll start doing it where like we'll go on like a clockwise rotation. Like whoever's in the top right goes first, and then just keep swirling down and down.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind that. We can switch the panels around every now and then.
Yeah. Well, it feels. What sucks is that I remember planning this episode out and thinking like, all right, what should we talk about? And well, this past week we all settled on like, all right, let's do our first debate because we haven't really debated anything on Chatooine yet. And I think because most of the time we're all very agreeable people and very reasonable and not too passionate about our opinions. But the today specifically, so much news has dropped. Like there was the Marcia Lucas thing that we're going to, of course, talk about because that leads into the Disney Star Wars debate. But then there was rumors about like another video game coming. There was Star Wars Hunters trailer. What else was there?
Some Book of Boba Fett leaks, possible.
The Book of Boba titles and all that. Like now there's stuff to talk about. We'll push all that to next week because I don't fucking care right now. Hopefully, and honestly, Star Wars Visions come out this Wednesday, so we'll have that to talk about.
Cannot wait.
As well. Do you guys know it comes out Wednesday? But do you guys know what time? Like, is it going to come out in the morning?
It's probably going to be if it's. I mean, we're talking about Disney here. Yeah, everything's always been dropping off at 3 a.m. Eastern time. They're doing it with all the MCU shows, and they did it with The Mandalorian too. The days have changed because they tried putting the Marvel and the Star Wars stuff on different days when they were going at the same time.
Do
you
guys like that? Do you guys like it being on Wednesdays instead of Fridays?
No,
I hate it.
Because I can't. No. Fridays, it's like you can enjoy it so much more because at least for most people, they work Monday through Friday. At least I do. So when I get home from Friday and that new Mando episode comes out, my Fridays are so good because throughout my work day, I'm just like, oh, Mando, when I get home, I can't wait. And then I get home and I watch Mando like 5 times because I can stay up as late as I want. Yeah.
You know why?
Not a fan of the Wednesday.
It's a terrible thing for me because for me, my job, I work 5 days a week. But Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are in the office days, and Monday and Friday are work from home days. So if it comes out on Friday, that's really Thursday night. So that means I could sleep in and not get in trouble. Now that it's on a Wednesday, if I want to stream it at whatever time it comes out, 3 in the morning, then I have to wake up like 4 hours later and be very sad on Thursday or Wednesday technically. So disaster.
Yeah. I feel like the community response to a lot of like the new episodes are going to be just kind of different. I mean, it normally felt like the weekend because we had a routine, right? Like Friday, the episode would come out for whatever show it would be. I think Saturday and Sunday, it seemed like online everybody would talk about it, but then Monday, spoilers, like the spoiler like lift was gone, and so we all just talked about what really happened. Now with it being on Wednesdays, I mean, you guys think at least for Chatooine, it'll be what 4 or 5 days after the show comes out or whatever episode comes out. We'll talk about it later, and it feels like by then the conversation may have moved on. I don't know. I hope it's a good strategy in the long run.
I know we could discuss. I know we were developing a good rhythm for Monday, but you make a good point about that being too far in advance or too far.
You can always have like a separate show that has to do specifically with talking about the recent episode of whatever. Yeah. You do it like on Friday.
We do it. Me and Yellow pretty much been doing watch parties for all these major shows. Like we didn't do it for Bad Batch or for the MCU What If, but like the live action stuff, Mando and all the MCU stuff, we were doing live watch parties when it was on anyway. So
when Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays are pretty hard for me to make a consistent commitment. But like Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'd be free. But again, that's with everyone else.
Yeah, like for me, I know Wednesday and Thursday nights, like I specifically have my camera operator job that like I can't do shit on those nights anymore, and I feel bad because I have a lot of friends who are like, hey, let's go do this thing, and I'm like, well, I can't work that night. Had my mic cut out.
No, you're
Uh,
good.
it farted a little bit.
Oh boy, the fart in the back.
I still don't keep hearing this fart. Did you guys hear?
You hear it problems, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Chat, do you hear
I'm
it?
not hallucinating.
Maybe
Is
it's only
one
on
gonna
our
get
end. Maybe
old on
the
us?
stream's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, chat. Let me know if my mic ever messes up, and I'll try to fix it behind the scenes. But let's talk about Marcia Lucas, who seems to. I want to clarify this from the start and let people really appreciate this. She has never been in the news for Star Wars, at least probably since three of us on this panel were alive. I mean, she has not been relevant into the Star Wars conversation for a very long time. But this big news was this interview that she had, and this was done by the late great J.W. Rensler, who sadly recently passed away within the past month or so. And this was his last book. And in this, he had a foreword by Marcia Lucas, who hasn't talked in a very long time. And this was the first interview she's given in a long time. She says that I like Kathleen. I always liked her. She was full of beans, which I have no idea what the fuck that means. But anyways, she says she was really smart and really bright, really wonderful woman. And I like her husband, Frank, who is Frank Marshall. He runs the production company with Kathleen Kennedy. And she says that I like them a lot. Now that she's running Lucasfilm and making movies, it seems to me that Kathy Kennedy and J.J. Abrams don't have a clue about Star Wars. They don't get it. And J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw that movie where they killed Han Solo, I was furious. I was furious that they killed Han Solo. Absolutely, positively. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought, you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the magic of Star Wars. You're getting rid of Han Solo. Like I said, we'll do this in the clockwise fashion for people on the panel. Palpa Memes, what's your reaction to that? What's your reaction to her being upset with Han Solo, being upset at both Kathy and J.J. Abrams? I mean, this is pretty powerful stuff coming from Marcia Lucas, who hasn't spoken in 20-odd years about Star Wars publicly and instantly comes out the gate. And I also missed the last part where she says, you can quote me on this, J.J., Kathy, call me. Like, that's some ballsy stuff. What do you have to say?
Man, I want to make it clear before I start talking, before people start, this is her opinion. She's totally right to her own opinion because it's her opinion. There's no right or wrong when it comes to this kind of thing. For me, and I know we had this discussion in the chat. It's her opinion, but I can't wrap my head around it. She says there's no rhyme or reason for Han Solo to die, which fundamentally with the story of Kylo Ren, there is a very good reason for Han Solo to die, right? It's eventually what came full circle and was what redeemed him, essentially. So to say that there was no rhyme or reason for that doesn't really make sense, let alone Han Solo only agreed to come back if they kill off his character, which is kind of funny. It's weird because the way it comes off is kind of, I don't want to say petty because I don't think that's the right word, but just kind of rude. Like, she says they don't get the magic of Star Wars, they don't get that, blah, 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 but my answer to that would be, well, what is the magic of Star Wars? Who determines what the magic of Star Wars is, or the heart? And there's no right or wrong answer because it's up to the fans. It's up to each individual fan, to them, what the magic of Star Wars is. And so, while again, it's her opinion, I really don't like the way she's kind of coming off about it, how it's like, I'm right, everyone else is wrong, JJ, Kathy, they don't understand Star Wars at all. And like, yeah, but who gets to decide that? Like, you're not the one who decides that. No one person is. But that was kind of my initial reaction. But I am kind of tired that everyone on both sides now is taking this as a way to use as ammunition for whatever reason. Because, I mean, it does hurt because she was one of the main people working on A New Hope. I know there's that kind of thing that she saved it in the editing room and all that. So it is a little bit more personal, taking it from that sense, but at the end of the day, it's just her opinion. You shouldn't let her opinion on these movies make you feel whether they're good or bad, or dislike or like them, because, I mean, we're all our own people at the end of the day.
Yeah, I do want to just disagree one little part. She is absolutely right, and everybody else is wrong.
Good answer. See ya.
But yeah, in seriousness though, it's like, there was a mixture of emotional opinion, but also some stuff that she's right about. Like her opinion on how do you kill Han Solo? You should never kill Han Solo. That's just someone who she loved Han Solo. You can tell. I know, but some people have a more deeper connection with some characters than others do. But and there are people who love a character so much that they never want to see it die. Now, from a story standpoint, I had no problem with Han dying. I had no problem with Luke dying. I actually expected them to die. Before I even knew Disney was making a sequel trilogy, I'm like, yeah, if they make a new one, I know definitely there's probably going to be some death and this and that going. It just happens, especially when you're handing off from one generation to the next. but my argument has always been, and I think this is what I felt from it, because it's what I have felt and other people have felt too, is that that's not the issue of them dying. It's the how and the why, and how they got to that point is what kind of I think the big argument is, not the death itself. You know what I mean? If it was done in a different way that, to a lot of people's opinion, was more respectful of the character, then maybe the death would be more palatable. But
yeah. Well, what do you think of like the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope versus the death of Han Solo in The Force Awakens? I really feel like when you watch A New Hope, you don't think, oh well, Alec Guinness is carrying this movie. He's a really good product in it. He's a great actor, and he really added a lot to the dynamic of the entire movie. But when it comes to Han Solo in The Force Awakens, man, when you look back at that movie, you take Han Solo out of it, at least in my opinion, and I like The Force Awakens. It is my favorite of the sequels. I really feel like Harrison Ford carried that movie. But I also feel like when I was watching that movie, it was inevitable that he would die in the end of it. And when he did die, I remember not feeling anything. At that young age, I loved seeing this movie in theaters. It felt very impactful to see Luke Skywalker at the end of it. I was so excited for Episode 8. But at the same time, I felt nothing when Han Solo died. So if her criticism is that Han's death wasn't done right and it didn't have the emotional impact a big character like that should, I understand that. I mean, she goes on to say in this interview that they kill off Han Solo, then they kill off Luke Skywalker, and then they don't have Princess Leia. I think that's a very valid criticism of at least the approach to the sequel trilogies, of killing off one of the original trilogy characters in every single movie, because then if we're trying to build these new characters, it takes away from their arc and we focus back to the original characters, which also feel completely separate and different from the actual original trilogy. So in terms of narrative and story, it really felt like a mixed bag of not finding the right tone for any of the things that they were going for. And for some cases, like with the new characters like Finn, Rey, and Poe, it did work, and a lot of people do like those character arcs. But it seems like for the original trilogy characters specifically, it wasn't done to have a lot of justice to people who really like those characters, at least in my opinion. Goldman, what do you have to say about her thoughts on everything, Kathy, JJ, and the sequels?
Well, first, I think you would agree with me on this, Star Wars Only, that people underrate Marcia Lucas's importance to Star Wars and where Star Wars is
don't get me
today.
started. I will go on a tangent about that all day.
So whatever she says has some credibility. Now, granted, I disagree with pretty much everything she says. I pretty much disagree with everything the two of you say, to my left and top left. But I don't want to focus exactly on what she said, because we can debate the quality of Han and Luke's death. But just the notion of using quotes from people who once belonged or still do belong to a project to kind of push their own agenda or their own side. Because I think it's a very dangerous thing that if you're working in a franchise story and that franchise is no longer owned by the person who created it, that only if it completely 100% honors what that guy, the original person, did, then it's good. I probably worded that terribly, so let me try again.
I get what you mean.
So, like, just because, like, George, it's obvious, I shouldn't say obvious, but George Lucas, it probably isn't the biggest fan of the sequels. That's fine. That's not the story he would have told, whatever. I still love them, or at least I still love episode 7 and 8. And there's a lot of great stories out there where they're franchise stories not told by the original creator. Now, if someone's a big Marvel fan, they can correct me on this. But I watched an interesting video on how the Sam Raimi trilogy of the Spider-Man movies, the Spider-Man in that trilogy is not very similar to the very original Spider-Man runs of the comics. It's a fairly different story. I could be very wrong, but I watched an interesting video on that. And people love the Sam Raimi trilogy more than the, what's his name, Andrew Garfield movies. And Spider-Man 2 is considered to be one of the best comic book movies ever. And that supposedly doesn't honor Stan Lee's work. Supposedly. I could be dangerously wrong. And then I don't know if Ridley Scott created Alien, but he directed the first movie, which is a great movie. And then James Cameron made Aliens, which I think is one of the best movies ever. I'm not sure what Ridley Scott's involvement was in that movie. But anyway, Ridley Scott made Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which I think are terrible films. But he's technically the person who created it. And Dave Filoni didn't create Star Wars, but he's there to tell great stories. And I'm sure that people like hardcore EU fans would look at the Clone Wars and say Anakin in the Clone Wars does not honor the Anakin that George Lucas created. And you know what? You probably be right, but I think most people would agree that the Anakin in the Clone Wars is a more efficient version of the character than the one in the prequels. So I think it's just a very dangerous thing when you use people's quotes to. Of course, you want to take it seriously. If George Lucas came out and criticized the sequels, he created the franchise, so it has some credence to it. But it shouldn't completely ruin or praise a film because a creator in the past said it.
I mean, I feel. I mean, there was a lot of there that felt because it's not binary, right? I mean, there's quite a bit of spectrum, involved there when you're talking about, if this creative change here is loyal to stuff or isn't, or some stuff isn't that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Little things like the Clone Wars Anakin that just fleshed out the character. It didn't really fundamentally change anything about the character. It just added to it and gave it a more fleshed out story.
It made Anakin's personality in the Clone Wars is very different than in the films.
Yeah, I gotta go with Goldman on that.
It's not just better.
It's better. It's improved.
I wouldn't say
you guys
it's
gonna
better.
hate me.
I mean, I
prefer
better,
Hayden Christensen. I'm sorry.
I'm sure, but us old heads, man, when we went and saw the prequel trilogy, you don't understand. People try to play this revisionist history game nowadays. People are walking out of this theater like annoyed and upset.
And like Hayden as an actor. A lot of people at that time were like, Hayden is an awful actor. Like, it wasn't even just like the argument that it was bad dialogue. They're like, no, like I find him
a whiny little bitch. That's what they kept saying.
People did not like Anakin Skywalker. Like, it's just
talk about people talking about now about how Luke's character was assassinated. Back then, God, people were saying Darth Vader was
Darth Vader's ruined.
Oh, it was. He went from this terrifying villain to this little 9-year-old boy. I mean, it was really weird.
Now some of that it was okay because he turned. You know he was a Jedi Knight, so you know there was goodness there, and that's the whole point. So you do need to see that. That part's okay. I mean, Lucas still messed up a lot of it the way he did it, but that part needed to be there. But it was mostly the acting of Hayden, and like I said, Revenge of the Sith is what actually gave it a little sheen. That's when people started saying, okay, you know what? This movie, at least they did okay with this one. That felt real Star Wars, Hayden wasn't as whiny. I mean, he was, but not as whiny, I guess you could say. And his lines just didn't come across right. So, I mean, what they did in Clone Wars didn't change it. It just changed what the actor did to it, but it didn't change the character from a standpoint of what he was.
I would disagree.
How? Yeah, but how? What was fundamentally changed then?
The Anakin in the Clone Wars is a much more masculine, heroic version. Again, you don't see Anakin in the Clone Wars whine all that much. Granted, it could very well be the acting.
In the Clone Wars, he actually has some wit to him. He doesn't have that in the prequels, in my opinion.
Yeah. Took a testosterone shot for the day. I mean,
look at the way Anakin flirts with the Zygerian queen compared to the way he flirts with Anakin. It's like I tried it once where I watched the Clone Wars Siege of Mandalore mixed with Revenge of the Sith, and while I think it works brilliantly, I just in my head cannot wrap my head around the fact that Anakin at the end of his conversation with Ahsoka is the same Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. It's just not the same person.
Sure, but it doesn't fundamentally change the character. It just changed how it was. It just changed how it was portrayed. Because Anakin, be it in Clone Wars or prequels or the original trilogy, he's always been described as and talked about as, and still tries to display a lot of arrogance and a lot of cockiness. He's always had that. Hayden's just came out a little more whinier, but he still had that same confidence. So there really wasn't a change. It was just how it was shown. The character was still the same character.
Fair enough, but I wouldn't downplay it as just a different version of the character.
What was interesting to me is that like Marcia also not only spoke about Anakin Skywalker, but like she talked about George, she talked about the Phantom Menace, and we talk about people using this quote from her as kind of a validation to not like the new movies, or use it as like, oh well, look, she worked on these movies and she doesn't like the sequels. I don't see that judgment being casted on the prequels either. She says in this quote, George is, in his heart and soul, a good guy and a talented filmmaker. I wish he would have kept directing other kinds of movies. But when I went to see episode 1, I had a friend who worked at ILM who took me as a guest to the preview. I remember going out to the parking lot, sitting in my car, and I cried. I cried because I didn't think it was very good, and I thought he had such rich vein to mine, a rich palette to tell stories with. He had all these characters, and I thought it was weird that the story was about this little boy who looked like he was 6 years old, but then later on he's supposed to get with this princess who looked like she's 20 years old. what's unique about this, and I remember telling you guys before we started the stream, the reason I found that quote more impactful and meaningful to me is because I not only love Marcia Lucas and her impact on Star Wars, and I love the behind the scenes production, because I feel like that is more reflection on not only her ex-husband George Lucas, but the departure from Star Wars and the feeling of Star Wars from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy, and how it went from the original trilogy Star Wars, Marshall Lucas, George Lucas, Irvin Kershner, Gary Kurtz, Richard Marquand, Larry Kasdan, all these people working in collaboration to make this franchise, as opposed to what you have with the prequels, where it really felt like only George Lucas. He was the writer, the producer, the director, and he had final say on every single small thing. And it didn't seem like he allowed a lot of collaboration. So that's why when she says that she broke down and cried in the parking lot, like, that speaks volumes to someone like me, because it's like, damn, that really shows to me that she thought George has so much more, and this is the best he can do now. Like this is sad. And I think, Lunga, you said before the stream started that it like would reflect on his legacy poorly. What do you guys think about that? I'll give this to you first, Palpa Memes. What do you think about what she said about the Phantom Menace and her feelings for it? I mean, that's impactful, especially if it's the first one after she divorced him.
Yeah, it's definitely it's obviously sad, because like I'm like, I think at least me, me, Goldman, and only, I grew up with the prequels. They were my Star Wars, and I still have a huge love for them, even though I don't think they're very good movies. I can still enjoy them because, I mean, they're Star Wars. There's a lot of things I can find great about them. But growing up as a kid, I was like, no, these are the greatest things ever. I loved them so much more than the OT, mainly because I thought the OT was boring. My opinions on that have changed a little bit since I've gotten older. So it is sad to hear that, but I think it's interesting what you said, Star Wars Only, that she saw it not in a way as, oh, this movie sucks, it's god awful, but rather in a way of, man, this could have been so much better. And it makes me wonder if she did think that way, if she's like, if I was there helping him, we could have made this so much better, not in a very spiteful or arrogant way, but in a genuinely honest, caring way, where she's like, this could have been something great. And then, I mean, obviously, I don't think the Phantom Menace is that bad. I don't really like it, but I think her crying just shows that, I mean, when you work on the OT and stuff and see the success it has, then you see this new trilogy and how completely different it is, and different to the expectations of the fans and stuff. And just like we see with the sequels were completely different than what a lot of fans expected, and that's okay. I think in her mind, she was just like, I could have helped save this, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. But it is kind of disheartening. It's kind of sad to hear, again, as a kid who grew up with the prequels and stuff. But like I said, I think we talked about this a second ago. It's just kind of annoying how you don't really see that part of the articles. There's been a few that I've seen, but if you look at the few that I've seen, all of them are now, all the comments on those articles that kind of blew up, every single one of them isn't talking about what she said about the prequels. It's them saying, well, the sequels are worse, so this is okay. I'm like, that's not how it goes.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now, again, if you're talking about prequel defenders, like I know there's a segment of fandom out there that are just like huge, like the prequels are the best thing ever created, and they love it more than anything.
Right, masterpiece.
And this and that. Yeah. So I mean, I know there's those people out there too, but you can. Just because what she says about the prequels doesn't discount what she said about the sequels.
That's not what I'm saying at all, but I'm saying there's a lot of people flipping that, what you just said, and saying, well, the sequels are so much worse, so none of her arguments here are valid, basically, is what I've been personally seeing a lot. And this comes from someone who does have a genuine love for the prequels.
I mean, yeah, it's weird, because to me, all of her comments are valid. George Lucas'
absolutely,
wife.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think the difference, Palpa Memes, is that the prequel discussion has been going on for over 20 years now, and it's kind of settled. So if she comes out and says, "Oh, I thought the prequels were bad, and I cried when I saw them," it's like, for a lot of people are going to be like, "Well, you know, the prequels were great, and she's a fucking idiot." Like, there's a reason. Like, the most disgusting comment I saw was like someone say, like, "I see why George divorced her." I'm like, dude, what a bitch move.
I saw some of those. Yeah, maybe
what a scummy thing to say. Like, you don't like to equate that to be like their relationship and just sum it up like that. It's like awful.
They're freaking movies.
Yeah.
Come on, this is fiction. Okay, let's remember this is not real.
But the prequel discussion has been going on for so long that if she says that, there are going to be people who are like, "Oh, that's irrelevant," and there's also going to be people who are like, "Yeah, well, like we all know the prequels suck, and we've moved on from that. The sequels are
the things she said are things that Star Wars fans have been saying for decades. I mean, they're like, it's old news at this point. It's like, yeah, we get it. It was weird that he had his little kid and his adult looking princess. Yeah, it's weird. We get it. You know, that's been there, done that.
I'd say the same, even though it's not the same amount of time, but I'd say the same about the sequels. I mean, I've heard the same arguments. Not to say that her argument's valid. That's not what I'm saying, but just kind of reiterate your point about we're going to be hearing the same sequel things over and over and over again for the next, I don't know how long, 10, 20 years, maybe. I hope it's not that long. So it's going to be interesting looking back at these comments in 10 years, 10, 15 years from now and see where the narrative's at,
the other difference was the prequels didn't have the social media stuff, number one. And it didn't have, there wasn't like this, you know how there's the camp of people who hate all Disney Star Wars and there's the camp of people who love the sequels. There wasn't this camp that when it came out that loved the prequels and the OT people saying, no, they suck. There wasn't like these two camps fighting. You know what I mean? It was pretty much of a people either saying I thought it was okay, and then those people saying, yeah, that was kind of weird. I didn't like it. You know, So
I would say like 2000, because I remember, because again, I was born in 2000, so 2007 to 2010 is when I feel like more of the prequel hate started rising based on the rise of the internet and social wise, especially with YouTube. We got the Plinkett reviews and everything, which blew up. Articles were made about it and all that. So I think we can look at that timeline, the 2010 to, I'd say 2000, about 2008 to 2012, I'd say would be where like the real peak of prequel hate was going on and stuff, because we got
but then all the memes came out and the prequel love.
Well, it's funny. I watched a video. This is funny because like I watched a video that was from like 6-7 years ago or something insane, like years ago. It's called the Totally Phantom Menace, and it's going frame by frame of Duel of the Fates, which most people say is an awesome fight. And it's breaking down how god-awful the choreography is. And I'm like, holy cow, that's awful. And it just reminds me, I'm like, oh, wait, people did that with Last Jedi. I'm like, yeah, because you're not supposed to watch a movie in slow motion. You know?
Like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah, and it made me laugh, because it's like, if you watch that video, there are genuine like problems. Are like, holy cow, this is awful. But then you watch the fight in full, you're like, that's an awesome fight.
Well, I mean, we saw Luke miss that kick on the sail barge, which was a
force kick, actually. Force kick. Come on, man. Come on, Lunga.
I'd like to say one more thing about Marcia Lucas, and please. I could be wrong about this, but Marcia Lucas was an editor, so people like her, they probably look at the original Star Wars movies as great films, which they are. When it came to the prequels, I don't think it was George Lucas's number one priority to make a great film. Because, I mean, most people think Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace are poor films. Now, a lot of people love Avengers, and that's great. Again, most people agree that Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are rather poor films.
Yeah.
But those films are loved today by a lot of people. Because George Lucas understood how, I don't want to say how to make his movies last, but how to make a younger generation of children, because Star Wars is for kids, appreciate his films and grow an attachment to them. There's a lot of people that, again, people who don't like Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace, they still love the prequel era. They love what those films established in the lore. And that's what I think George Lucas was focused on. Not so much selling toys, but creating a franchise that would matter to kids. So now when they're grown up, they can defend those films hard. Marcia Lucas probably looks at the Phantom Menace and just thinks it's a bad film. It's probably the same reason why Gary Kurtz didn't want to do Return of the Jedi. He thought... he wanted a more darker ending for Return of the Jedi. I think he wanted Han Solo to die, and he wanted it to be a little bittersweet, but George Lucas wanted that fairy tale ending. I believe one of his quotes is, I think if you get a happy ending adds an extra $10 million to the box office or something. And that's what George Lucas wanted to do. Now, would Return of the Jedi have been better if maybe it was a little darker and there weren't teddy bears overthrowing the Empire? Sure. I guess we'll never know, but probably. But that's not what George Lucas wanted to do. So I think, again, just take George Lucas's intentions may not always align with what other people like Marcia Lucas say.
Well, I think you brought up a good point about George thinking about the kids in the future, because that's something he told Ahmed Best when Ahmed was getting a lot of backlash for Jar Jar. He says, people hate you now, but the kids are going to love you in 20-something years. And he was absolutely right. So George does know how to make a blockbuster film. He knows how to make something that kids are going to appreciate as time goes on. But I think with Marcia having a bad reaction to it in 1999, it's that the mentality at the time was, hey, this is coming after the original trilogy. So the idea of the Phantom Menace being bad was unfathomable to a lot of fans at that time, because it's like, how can Star Wars be bad when these first three movies were so good? And so it being bad was just kind of a shock, and I think a shock to her and a lot of other people, because of what it actually meant to see those first three films, and how it, and now that we have the sequel trilogy, it may be like repeating history for herself, but she might think they're even worse than the prequels. I mean, we really don't know. I don't have much to say about Marcia, but I thought it was a very good way to bring up today's debate and the topic that I wanted us to talk about, which is, of course, Disney Star Wars. And I know this is an endless debate people have constantly of Disney Star Wars, is it good, is it bad? My debate that I'd want us to have today is, do you think Disney Star Wars, or Disney ruined or saved Star Wars for like the long-term investment where it's going to go in the future? And I know probably all of us, all four of us, may end up saying it saved Star Wars, and even if all four of us said it ruined it, I think we're going to come at it from very different perspectives, and definitely have varying opinions on what was good and what was bad from it. So I don't even know. We haven't done a debate yet, so we don't have a format for it. I have no idea how to do it.
Where's our moderator?
Yeah, there's not going to be much of a moderator. I would like to just, I guess, free form it and just kind of let our thoughts go on it, and of course get the chat involved. Like, chat, you let us know if you guys think Disney saved or ruined Star Wars, and I'll give my point of view and perspective on it. I think it. I think it carried Star Wars for a little longer than it would have if like Lucas had kept it, because I really think that it's hard to say if they saved or ruined it, at least this soon. It hasn't even been 10 years since they've owned the franchise. It'll be 10 years next year, and I think it'll be a really interesting time to reflect and look back on those 10 years, because from 2012 to 2015 we didn't really have anything. And I mean, ask yourselves this: when it comes to Lucasfilm post 2012, and the way, don't even think about the films, but do you guys think they've made more good decisions than bad, or more bad decisions than good? Because personally, I would say I think they've made more bad decisions than good, despite me loving The Mandalorian, despite me being really happy with the whole Lucasfilm Games thing that's going on. And even Clone Wars Season 7 coming back, all this stuff, it seems like, yeah, we're happy with a lot of these results, but it came at the cost of other things. Like, we lost Seasons 7 and 8 of the Clone Wars because Disney wanted to cancel it because they didn't want to work with Cartoon Network. There's a lot of, I think, mistakes that they made. So I guess that's a good way to start this conversation. And Alonga, I want you to start this because I'm really interested in your thoughts. Do you think Disney or Disney and Lucasfilm, put them in one entity in terms of Star Wars, do you think they've made more good decisions than bad on Star Wars since 2012, or more bad decisions than good?
I think that we're at a tipping point where they've kind of balanced the margins for me. That's what I feel. I'm not going to say there's been more. I mean, if you start to quantify the decisions, could I say there's been bigger bad decisions that they've done than maybe a bunch of small good decisions? Yeah. But as far as, just numbers on where they messed up and where they're doing good, I think we've reached a little balance point. And now what we're going to get with these next series and the possible movies coming is going to determine which way that tilts. If it tilts back, completely bad or good.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because there's so much more coming. But honestly, the problem with that, in my opinion, is that it may be too late for some people. Because long ago, you'll remember, after the prequels came out, there were a lot of Star Wars fans who were growing up with the original trilogy. They just left. They're like, okay, like, I'll come back and I'll get involved in Star Wars. But being an active and passionate fan, that kind of fell off the wayside for a lot of people. Maybe, and this is hypothetical and something that we're not going to be able to tell for a while, maybe Disney kind of shot themselves in the foot with these new films in the past 10 years of Star Wars, of making a lot of potentially bad decisions. Because I'll be honest with my opinion on this. I think they've made more bad decisions than good. Since the purchase of Lucasfilm in 2012. I really think they were trying to build a foundation for something, which is a great idea, but I also think they tried to build a foundation on something that already had a foundation, and they were trying to remove the original foundation, which is what people loved it for. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of fans in the past 10 years who have kind of left Star Wars, and it's going to kind of be a bad sign for the next 20 to 30 years, because we'll still get some new fans, but it's not going to be on the quantity that we built over the last 20 years with the prequels and with the sequels, if that makes sense. So I think that those bad decisions are going to come to bite them in the ass as time goes on. Good decisions are great. Building the shows are great.
But then you see things like this when they have the Star Wars celebrations. There's sold out. There's still a ton of people. Mm-hmm. The fans aren't. It's very subjective. The fans aren't going away. Yeah, are there some that said, "Yeah, forget it, I'm done"? Well, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. You can rag on me all you want if you can. You really didn't care about it that much if you're that easy to walk away. Sorry, if I'm dating a girl and she does one thing I don't like, and I'm like, you know what, forget this, I'm out. I'm out the door. Did I really care about her? But if I care about her, I'm gonna fight to try to make things work, right? Well, it just seems to me. It seems like a real petty thing just to say, screw it, I'm not going to watch anything they make because they pissed me off with these couple movies. That sounds silly to me. But if they did it, they did that. But I don't think the fandom's not. I mean, it's probably significantly less than it used to be? Sure. But it's still holding strong, and there's still more people coming on, especially these new shows. So it's a weird thing for me to put it in that kind of perspective, just because some people said I'm done with Star Wars. Well, okay, cool. Yeah. A lot of people jump in and out of fandoms all the time.
I tend to agree more with Lunga's original take. It's annoying because The Mandalorian technically came out right before The Rise of Skywalker came out. Yeah. But let's treat it as if The Mandalorian came out right after The Rise of Skywalker. So if you take the 5 films from Disney, so up until The Rise of Skywalker came out, I'd actually say I think they made more bad decisions than good. The Force Awakens, and I think it's evident by when you look at The Force Awakens, it made $2 billion. I know people don't like to talk about box office, but context really does matter. The Force Awakens is, I think, the 4th highest grossing film ever, and is still the highest grossing film domestically, and it's beaten Avengers Endgame by maybe 100 million or so. That's a lot of money. So the hype for The Force Awakens was insane. And when you look at The Rise of Skywalker, the fact that it made about half of what The Force Awakens made. Oh, there goes Stars Only. The fact that it made only half of what The Force Awakens made says something about there just being not the same interest. Now, The Last Jedi had a good opening weekend, and people could argue if it was a box office flop or not. I'm not talking about the box office. But when you look at just The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, there was no doubt a decline in just the overall perception of it. And when
that happened between how many people went to see The Phantom Menace and how many people went to go see Attack of the Clones. It was the same drop off.
Yeah, but Revenge of the Sith was in between.
Then it jumped back up. Yeah, but it jumped back up again because.
But when you look at the 5 Disney Star Wars films, for me, it's a miracle that a film like The Last Jedi was even made. Because The Force Awakens, while it's a movie I thoroughly love and means a lot to me, it is a very safe film and it's a very fan servicey film. For me, this episode 8 would have made or break that movie.
He said sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, Star Wars Only said he'll be right back, guys. His internet just dropped out, so he's coming.
All right. So for me, episode 8 would make or break episode 7, and for me, it made it. And now, of course, the biggest mistake that they made was not having an actual plan for the trilogy. I don't want to get into that too much.
But that's the main deal. Yeah, that literally is the main deal.
I think you could tell a great story and not have it completely planned out. I think episode 8 was a great continuation of episode 7.
Well,
but I get
they did though. Most people, but they did. JJ had a treatment for for all 3 movies.
Yeah, JJ had a treatment, but it's Kathleen Kennedy's job to make sure that you have to follow through on that treatment.
Well, he gave it to Rian Johnson.
Yeah, and Rian Johnson said no, but okay.
Exactly, and Kathleen Kennedy went, okay, if that's what you want to do.
JJ shouldn't have been the one to create a treatment. Him, Rian Johnson, and at the time Colin Trevorrow should have worked together for treatment. I don't want to get into this.
No, I get, but it makes perfect sense because Marvel has different directors. But they have one person who's in charge of the whole creative process. That's Feige.
Yes, I don't want to get into that now. So that was a big mistake. But if you look at what Disney's done with the films, at least again, this is before The Mandalorian came out. They've always been very reactionary, and I think that is a very, very dangerous thing to do. Before The Force Awakens, they wanted to make it nothing like the prequels. Now, again, I love The Force Awakens. Would I have liked some prequel connections? Absolutely, because I think continuity is one of the most important things when it comes to a franchise like Star Wars. The Last Jedi, Force Awakens was too similar to Episode 4. Let's make Episode 8 radically different. Now, it worked out for me greatly, and a lot of people despise the film. And then Episode 9 was a complete reaction to Episode 8 with certain decisions. They began. I don't want to get into the details, but when you base your stories off of a reaction from a fan base, that could be very dangerous. Of course, you want to listen to them, and if you're doing something terrible and complete disaster, then yes, you don't want to entirely course correct, but you want to be aware what people are saying. Charlie Spur just
yeah, $5 super chat from Charlie Spur. Star Wars Only's not back in here to highlight, but yeah, $5 super chat from Charlie Spur. He says, "Goldman bad, boo, boo." Just kidding. I love you, Goldman.
Yes. So thank you, Charlie Spur. So yeah, I think with the 5 films up until The Mandalorian, I think Disney actually made some mostly poor decisions. None of them weren't catastrophic for me. I love Force Awakens. I love Last Jedi. Rogue One and Solo are meh. I mean, Solo was a very weird decision for a story. Yeah. That one was seems like it was a cash grab. Rogue One, even though I don't like the film, I think is a brilliant idea, and I wish they did more of that.
And the fact that that whole Solo was a movie right after Last Jedi did hurt it.
And that it came out in May instead of December.
Right, and it went back to the drawing board how many times, and the director changes, and there was just a lot of...
Actually, time out. Screw the planning. Probably the worst thing, well, not the worst thing, but the biggest problem Kathleen Kennedy did is not properly vetting people for her projects. I think for every project besides The Last Jedi, someone had to be let go. From minor cases like The Force Awakens, where Michael Arndt was not able to finish the script, to the 2 people, Laurie Miller, who basically finished filming the film, and they had to redo the whole thing. So in my opinion, that's actually what Kathleen Kennedy's biggest hole was. But so that's like the phase 1 of Disney Star Wars, the films. And
you could even put that blame on Iger too. Because they bought it, and he told her, "What, you have 2 years to make the first movie, and I want one every 2 years or something like that." I mean, it was like he put a very, very, very tight timeline on it, and I think in her hubris of saying I can handle this, she missed the vetting, missed certain important things, and then it literally just from the problems they had, the few problems they had already going into the Force Awakens, it was just a domino effect after that for everything. It was always like reaction, not just reaction to fans, but reactions to what's happening or changing this line or getting rid of this person or getting rid of that person or bringing this person in. It just became this whole domino effect throughout all 3 movies.
Actually, now that I think about it, I mean, I think this just occurred to me, but maybe the reason why they wanted 3 different directors for the sequels was so that they could release it every 2 years. Because if you're doing one person, you need more than 2 years. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. It's just something that probably just...
But it's not an anthology. It's a trilogy.
I agree.
Meaning you can have 3 different directors, but someone has to be the one in control of the storyboard, okay? Someone has...
The Last Jedi was many things, but I don't think people could argue The Last Jedi was rushed. The Force Awakens may have been rushed. I don't think The Last Jedi was rushed. Rian Johnson...
I don't think it was rushed. Yes. They had a few issues, but they were like regular movie issues. I
believe Rian Johnson had the final film locked, sealed in September, 3 months before the movie came out. And when you look at The Rise of Skywalker, that was like a race to the finish line where they were supposedly making changes 2 weeks before the film was actually released.
But wait, wasn't The Last Jedi's date delayed? It wasn't supposed to be originally May, and then they moved it to December.
Well, Rian Johnson did ask for more time to write the script. He said he wanted to revise some things in the script, and he got turned down.
I don't think that was entirely yes, it got delayed because when Force Awakens came out, Last Jedi was supposed to come out in May of 2017. But I think Disney realized, I don't think that was because The Last Jedi wasn't any problems. I think they're like, listen, I think December worked great for us. I think at that time Rogue One was already going to come out the following December. So I think they wanted to plant the flag in December, but I mean, they moved Solo to May, so whatever. But I don't know. I don't think that was anything to do with actual production problems. But you never know. I could be wrong. So yeah, those are the 5.
In a non-pandemic time, moving back the release date 6 months is a problem. There's a problem, Goldman. Wherever side it's on, there's a problem.
I wouldn't say it's a problem. I don't think it's guaranteed a problem. No, but they realized December was probably a better time to release the movie.
No, it was delayed. It was delayed.
It was delayed very early on then, over a year before the movie came out. But anyway, let's move on to post Rise of Skywalker, because I think since the Rise of Skywalker came out, I think they've made fantastic decisions. The Mandalorian is great, but not only is The Mandalorian great, it makes an effort to connect everything together. And that's something that The Force Awakens and even The Last Jedi really didn't do. Rise of Skywalker tried. And I think that's important. And if this is why retconning the sequels is the most dangerous thing the franchise can do, because yes, I know there's hardcore fans that hate the sequels and want to remove from canon. But if you start doing that, if you start creating stories and none of them ever even remotely acknowledge the sequels, then you just created. It's not like a break in the continuity, but it just feels
You kind of repeat the same problem that I'd say The Force Awakens and TLJ did.
Kind of. It just feels off that in the chronology of Star Wars, whether you like it or not, the events of the sequel trilogy are very important. You see the deaths of the original 3 characters, and you find out Emperor Palpatine didn't really die, and that he came back and basically rebuilt the First Order and took over the galaxy again. That's some big stuff. And like if this is why I'm very concerned. If the Mandalorian, when the Mandalorian came out, I did not need it to connect to the sequels at all. Do I like little things here and there? Sure, but I did not need to. But right now they're introducing cloning stuff. Mm-hmm. And given the context,
we heard his theme in it,
Given that the context of everything, even with
there's still people saying that, oh, you really can't tell this. It's obviously Snoke.
It's Snoke. Come on.
Or I mean, it's a Snoke. It may not be the Snoke, but
pickle jar Snoke.
It's something that's leading to Snoke. If it turns out that in the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian, that none of it connects to the sequels in any way, and it's just a completely different cloning project, I think that's very bad. And that's not because I'm a sequel fan. You missed an opportunity to connect things. And look what the
you hinted at connecting things and then didn't follow through. Obviously I'm not the fan of overall the sequel trilogy, but listen, they're there. I'm not a fan of retconning stuff. It's there, okay? So it's there. It is what it is. Now we move on and we try to do things to make things better.
Look at George.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Look at George Lucas with the prequels, right? When even when Revenge of the Sith came out, people enjoyed the film, but the prequel trilogy as a whole was looked at as a failure. In 2005, a lot of people saw it that way. Longa could probably attest to that better than I can. George Lucas didn't give up on the prequels, right? Even I've seen it in interviews for Revenge of the Sith. He said he had an animated series planned because George Lucas understood the importance of sticking to your guns and telling the story you want to tell. I think when George Lucas wrote the prequels, I think in the back of his mind, he always wanted to tell some version of the Clone Wars. And it didn't matter that most people hated the prequels. George Lucas wanted to tell that story, and look what happened. The Clone Wars is a big reason why a lot of people love the prequels now, and that's a fact, whether you hate the Clone Wars or not. And that's because George Lucas didn't listen to the fans who were screaming and wanted to boycott his product. And not just the Clone Wars. You know, when the prequels are coming out, there were so many video games, there were so many books, so many comics, that again, for those kids, they could dive deeper into that era that they consider their Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's why they love it, because people that grew up with or were around, just prior to the prequels, you had the explosion of the prequels happening and all the EU lore being made and all that other stuff, and it was, I'm not gonna say a golden age of Star Wars because the movies were great, but a golden age of just so much stuff for fans.
Exactly.
In that time period.
If I was not 4 years old when Attack of the Clones came out, because when Attack of the Clones came out, they launched the Clone Wars multimedia project with the Star Wars Clone Wars show. They had so many books and comics that tied together nicely. I would have read every single one of them if I wasn't 4 years old. And even though I probably wouldn't, Attack of the Clones at the time was one of my favorite movies. Again, I was a little kid, proving that what George Lucas did worked. And it just shows that when you are, the whole point I'm trying to get to is that when you're too reactionary about the way a very angry fan base reacts, then you can do some very dangerous things. Now, of course, there's cases like the Snyder Cut where everyone hates the original Justice League. But there's wars going on there, and people. No, it's bad. The Snyder Cut thing is. You think Star Wars fans are bad? Well, I mean, other people.
It's bad.
Are there people out there defending the original Justice League, saying it's a good movie?
Yes.
I've never met a single person. I've never met a single person who said that. Not one.
There are, and there are people who don't like Zack Snyder.
Well, to be fair, there's also people who like Zack Snyder. So, like the DC fandom debating the quality of those movies, they already started at the bottom of the barrel.
The debate with DC, and I could be wrong because I'm not as involved. The debate in DC is over Zack Snyder's 3 films themselves, not over the quality of the original Justice League. Am I correct?
There's arguments there. There's a lot of arguments. I'm telling you, it's a very, very toxic part of fandom. on both sides.
I think what he's saying though, Lunga, is that like the mass debate is about Zack Snyder's films. Like when we come to Star Wars, like the debate is, are the prequels good, not or the prequels or the sequels good, not each film individually. Because a lot of people will say Revenge of the Sith is good, but they won't say the prequels are good, and vice versa.
Right. Well, those are also in eras. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The Zack Snyder films all came out now, all at the same time. We're talking about different eras of fandom, the 70s and 80s and then the 2000s and then now.
Yeah, but you don't have people saying... You have people that like what Zack Snyder did and want him to continue, and there are people that are glad Zack Snyder is gone and they like the direction that DC's going. But I wouldn't say any of those people that like the direction DC's going say that they thought Justice League 2017 was a good movie.
No. But what they do say is, like, again, I don't know if it's splitting hairs, but what they say is, oh, yeah, original Justice League was bad, but this new Snyder Cut is way worse. Too long, garbage, we didn't need all this. So they'll say stuff like that.
You don't... With the prequels, you have passionate defenders of the prequels.
Yeah.
There's no passionate defenders of the Justice League.
Yeah, with that, I'll go with that. Yeah, there aren't any passionate defenders of the original Justice League.
So, yes, when you have passionate defenders of people like the prequels, it's important to cater to them and not the people who hate your product. That was the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I went on for a long diatribe there.
So are you guys? I think we're all feeling kind of positive about the future of Disney Star Wars at the moment, right?
Yes. I am cautiously optimistic. There are things that still concern me, especially with the Book of Boba Fett. And
Can I say my answer?
Yeah, of course.
No one wants to hear from you.
I've been letting you two. You guys had
race simp.
As I should be.
You saying race simp so fast? You saying race simp almost sounded like racist? And
I know. I thought that's where you're going. You freaking race simp.
I was like, this is
race
an interesting way to
see now. What'd you see now?
Segue into the debate, but we can talk about Palpatine's being a racist. What do you racist?
Whoa!
So, not to be racist, but no. Oh man, someone's gonna clip that in another freaking clip together and be like, actually found this out. What was the question? Was do I think Star Wars saved or destroyed, or Disney saved or destroyed Star Wars? Right?
Yeah, that's the main debate.
Or have they done more good?
So, I think how I want to look at it is I always go back and look at where Star Wars is at before it got sold and where Star Wars is at now. Before it got sold, Star Wars was I call it very lackluster, even as a kid. I didn't really enjoy the Clone Wars show. I mean, the Dave Filoni Clone Wars show. I thought he was I didn't really get super into it. I really liked the prequels. I thought the show was bleh. But in terms of content and stuff, not only were we at, I'd say just as bad as a division when it comes to the prequels and the prequel hate as it is with the sequels. There's no true way to know that, but I'll be honest, I don't know if you guys agree with me on that. I think that the hate and the division in the fandom and the hatred in the fandom was just as bad as it was for the sequels as it was for the prequels.
Is worse. I think the prequels is worse.
I mean, yeah, but of course with the internet and stuff, you have a much larger crowd for that. So it's hard to tell. But the point I want to get at is my overall answer is yes. And I'm not, yes, I love the sequels, Rise of Skywalker. You guys are going to throw a stick at me, but it is my favorite Star Wars film. I don't care what anyone says. I freaking love that film.
God.
We can have you guys, all three of you can debate me on that, and I promise you, I will win. No, I'm just kidding. No, but for real. But setting my, biases aside, yes, I love the sequels. I really, really love The Mandalorian. Don't really care for The Bad Batch. Thought Clone Wars Season 7 was cool. Rebels was okay.
Rebels is so good.
It has great moments. Okay, how about that? I'll give you that one. It's got great moments. But if we look at where Star Wars was before it got sold, it was in the same spot as it was when it came to the sequels, except, at least with new Disney Star Wars, we have a ton of content that's coming out that fans absolutely love. You didn't have that with that prequel era. You didn't have a just mass majority, yes, this is absolutely amazing. Just look at Mando Season 2 and compare, or Mandalorian itself, and then compare it to the Clone Wars, which they're the big new Star Wars show, right? Clone Wars didn't have nearly a percentage of the audience that Mandalorian had. So even with the prequel hate, then we had Clone Wars, which did stuff for the kids, but even those current people who hated the prequels, they didn't care for it. Then you have Disney Star Wars, which we have the sequels, which are hated a lot, just like the prequels, but you also have all these other things that people just adore and have so much passion for. And so I think when we look at it that way, I can definitely safely say that, yeah, it definitely was saved. Also the fact that I know we had some shows and stuff that George may have planned, but then they all got canned or whatever, maybe some video games. But other than that, I don't think George was ever going to go through with the sequel trilogy. He was getting very old. I could be wrong, but he had his ideas. There's a reason he sold it. Okay, there is a reason he sold it in the first place.
4 billion of them.
There you go. Hey, didn't he give that all to charity though?
No,
Didn't he give that to charity?
He used a lot of. Well, half of it was in
$2
stocks.
billion was cash, $2 billion was
Shares.
stock. So yes, he gave all his cash to education, which is very noble. But
Fair
let's
enough,
be
yeah.
honest, the real money is in the Disney stocks. And
I will
Yeah,
say,
that
Goldman,
$2 billion in stock already made up that $2 billion he gave away.
Goldman, there was one thing I fundamentally disagreed with you that you said so long ago, and it just got brought back into my head when we're talking about George and money, which is where you said that he made it just, to tell a story, not for toy sales. I disagree on everything with that. The amount of freaking toys that existed, there was vending machines with Anakin Pod Racer on that. No, go ahead.
Yes, George Lucas definitely wanted to sell toys especially with Return of the Jedi and all of the prequels.
Yep.
But he did. I think a big reason why was because he wanted those kids to appreciate it and have a story they appreciate going forward. I think if George Lucas, I don't think George Lucas would have done anything that would jeopardize that as his main goal. Is to have
No,
these
of course
films for
not.
kids.
But I do think there was a big reason in part for that.
Yeah,
I mean, they could still be side by side. I mean, he could still hold
absolutely. I
that
agree with you
vision.
there.
I would not say he made those films for toys.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I do think he made a ton of toys and worked with every single toy company on the planet Earth, because I mean, money's nice. We all like money.
Oh no, it was like Kenner only for a very long time.
No, but didn't he work with Hasbro and then?
It was actually a big deal with the toy industry because.
You got to think at first it was a big deal because he only gave it to a certain amount of people in the 70s and 80s, and then when it came to Lego, like the company Lego was going bankrupt in the 90s, and they would have gone bankrupt if it wasn't for Star Wars. I mean,
Star Wars just keeps saving everything but itself.
I'm telling you, like Star Wars has saved. Like people don't believe that Star Wars is the reason you have Pixar. Star Wars is the reason you have Lego today. Star Wars is the reason Marvel is still alive the way it is. Star Wars really did change, not just the franchise and kind of the culture around that time, but it really did change the world.
Movies.
Yeah.
At least the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what is unique about the prequel time of Star Wars, comparing it to the Disney, is what Shadow Trooper 376 was saying right here. Star Wars before Disney was a bit more of a niche kind of community with primarily games, comic novels only being made. Disney has brought it back into the mainstream, as well as bringing back the film part. I agree with a lot of that, because it did feel like that before Disney bought Star Wars. But I will push back a little bit with what you said, Papa Memes, about George Lucas continuing Star Wars. I think he would have made the sequels. I think it's pretty clear that he was going to make the sequels, and maybe the notion of selling it to Disney kind of pushed him to do that. But before he even sold it, he was already talking to Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. I don't think he talked to Harrison yet. So I do think George was going to continue it for story's sake. I think the question is, did George want to continue the story because he wanted the money from it, or did he want to continue the story for the sake of finishing the story? Because he seemed pretty content with episode 3 being the last movie. But then when you look at something like Disney, when they bought Star Wars, the second they bought it, they gave you an announcement for when the next movie's coming out. So it is kind of unique on how they approached it, because I don't think we would have a lot of the production issues with the sequels if Lucas was in charge. I don't think there would have been delays. I mean, it's
a hard thing to know what would or couldn't happen, because George himself is like contradicted himself so many times. Mm-hmm. He did the prequels. He's like, no, I'm not doing no more. That's it. We're done. I'm not doing no more. Then is doing it. Then he says, oh no, I don't want anyone else continuing any movie. I mean, other things they can do, but there's going to be no movies made after I'm gone, or if someone else has, or whatever. And now he's sold to Disney. That's what they're doing. So I mean, he flip flops so many times. It's literally. I think it's when he does it, it's like a spontaneous thing. He doesn't even know.
He told Mark Hamill that originally there was going to be 12 episodes.
Oh well, yeah. He said to everybody there was going to be 12
Yeah,
episodes.
yeah,
There
yeah,
was going to be 4
publicly, yeah.
trilogies. I mean, for a long time it was there's going to be episode. He would say like, "All right, I'm doing 4 through 6." He's like, "I'm going to go back into the prequels," and then later on in the 2000s, he would come back and do the sequel trilogy, and then there'd be something else that come out later. I mean, he had a big vision for this franchise and this series, and he truly wanted to make it serialized. It seems like things changed as time goes on. I mean, people change and whatnot. Him having kids affected that a lot, but it just seemed like his approach was fundamentally different than Disney's. Maybe equal in the terms of thoughts of merchandising and toy sales. I mean, he truly did push sales pretty bad in the prequels. I mean, Natalie Portman had a different dress on every single fucking scene she was in.
I really still don't believe that the anger or a lot of the hatred that was around the prequels at the time, I think it really affected him. I think it really affected him.
Oh, 100% affected
absolutely.
him. God,
Yeah. No way it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know he says that is because he had a kid, family, and stuff, but I mean, any normal human, any human being with a brain that gets that much hatred from millions of people, that's a lot of freaking hate. Like genuinely personal hate. I mean,
and it's turning on you. It's not even like new people or new fans. It's like they're turning on you.
No, your own fan base.
The classic saying, George Lucas raped my childhood. That was a very
that was a genuine thing. Now it's funny. It's not even coming full circle. We're just continuing the train right here, which is that Disney destroyed my childhood and setting all these awful things. And it's like we got Ahmed Best, who went, he became suicidal, and now you've got Daisy Ridley, who had to go to therapy because of the reaction that people had on her on social media and everything. And then you've got Kelly, and then you've got John, and blah blah blah, JJ Ryan. It's a train of just ridiculousness, and I'm not saying
oh my God! What's the actor who played the kid Anakin? Was that Jake Lloyd?
Jake Lloyd.
Jake Lloyd.
I mean, he went. Was it pretty much insane, right? Like,
he didn't go insane. He has schizophrenia, which is genetic.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Right. I don't mean to be a.
But I mean, but in his youth though, he was getting bullied and picked on in school and everything, and that. So I mean, it's
sad.
Bad.
And it's like the saddest part, maybe not even the saddest part, but just a very much sad part is the fact that no one has seemed to learn anything about the mistakes that happened in that decade. In fact, it's kind of a lot of it's the new people who grew up with these films. But that's a whole different topic that I don't want to get into.
But it's not.
I want to finish my answer with the Disney thing, and I'd say yes, absolutely. And again, putting my biases aside, if we look at where the prequels are at, and then we look at the sequels are at, we have the exact same problem, but with the sequel era, I guess this timeline, we have a lot more content coming out, and I'm not saying more equals better, but we have a lot of content that fans are genuinely, passionately excited for. And that's just something that just, as much as I love the prequel era and grew up with it, that's just, I can't say that was the same. It really wasn't at all. I mean, we had the prequels era, and then we had the prequel stuff, which the people who hated the prequels, they didn't care to play that stuff. They didn't care to play the games and all that. Whereas with the sequel era, we have the bad sequel movies that people say, but you also have things like Mando. We're getting Kenobi back. I mean, come on, we're getting all this stuff that people are genuinely excited for. So, yes, definitely, I'd say Disney saved it, whatever that word means. But yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I can say they saved it yet, because here's something that I genuinely want to get from you guys. When The Force Awakens came out, Disney had a good thing going because it was the first Star Wars movie after the sale. It's been the first Star Wars movie in 10 years. A lot of people felt good because it was a Star Wars movie without George Lucas. But with that said, it felt like at that time it was a big culture phenomenon. Everybody was you guys remember the hype for episode 7. It was not but 6 years ago. There was a feeling in the air unlike anything we've seen in our lifetime, and probably will ever see again. But that's my thing.
I will say that when they announced that he was making the Phantom Menace, it felt the same.
Yeah,
it was a very similar thing.
That's good, because I know the Phantom Menace was a little bigger, but this one still, for our lifetime, was huge. I want to ask you this, though. Do you think Star Wars is ever going to have that kind of hype and excitement going into it again? And that's where I kind of look at Disney and go, maybe they did kind of, even though I know you two like the sequels a lot, just because those films and all that stuff weren't received as well, I'm scared that going forward, we're going to have a lot more anticipation and hype for the shows because it's going to be a little more limited, more focused on the Star Wars fandom. But as a box office phenomenon, as a global superstar, maybe Star Wars has kind of lost that because of these new films, and maybe we're never going to have that kind of excitement for a Star Wars movie again, like we did with The Force Awakens, due to the lackluster response to the sequel trilogy. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think we're ever going to have something big as The Force Awakens?
I agree and disagree with what you just said. I don't think there'll ever be something as exciting as The Force Awakens again, but I think that's it. I don't think the quality of the subsequent films determines that. With the Phantom Menace, the original trilogy will no doubt always be the most popular thing with Star Wars. That is never going to change. The prequels were the beginning of that story, so there was the anticipation there. The sequels were the continuation of that story. If Han, Luke, and Leia were not in Episode 7, it wouldn't have done anything close to $2 billion. So because it's why if they did in Episode 10, I think if the sequel trilogy were genuinely great films, I don't think the excitement for Episode 10 would have matched the excitement for Episode 7, simply because it doesn't matter, right? Finn and Poe could have never been as popular as Han, Luke, and Leia. And unless Han, Luke, and Leia would have been absent from 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we're in Episode 10, then that would boost the excitement again. But no, I don't think something will ever match the excitement of Episode 1.
There's one thing we do have to take in consideration here. A lot of that excitement came because there was a lot of time frame between the prequels and the original trilogy, between the prequels and the sequels. A lot of time in between. Once it becomes a Marvel-ish kind of scenario, regardless of even if the movies were great. Okay, let's just say they did a great job with the sequel trilogy and people were still happy. Eventually, if you start making Star Wars movies every year constantly, and it's not like it was that 10 years or 15 years between, then the excitement level's gonna start to wane. You see that with Marvel movies. People are hype about Marvel movies, but depending on which one it is, it starts to wane. It's
not just
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
It's not just movies. It's anything too. It's like why do I think football is the most popular sport in America? It's probably because you get 20 weeks a year, one game a week for each team. With sport like baseball, a team plays 162 games each season. It's like, why is the holiday like Christmas?
Football, you have that one Super Bowl. You don't have all these different,
Right, and then another 2 months of playoffs.
Yeah. I don't watch football, but
and it's like with certain holidays are valuable because they happen once a year. So it's like the more rare something is, the more, I don't say cherished, but the more excitement there will be for when it comes around again.
But I feel like with Star Wars, because of the movies and the magical aspect that a lot of people have with it, and I'm going to use the most recent example that I have would be The Force Awakens into the Rogue One movie, because it felt like Force Awakens had a very good response to it, very positive at that time. I know there was some criticism for it being a copy of A New Hope, but more than likely, it seemed like most people were okay with it and really hyped for Star Wars. Yes. That carried into Rogue One. Everybody had a really positive reaction to Rogue One. It hasn't aged like fine wine, in my opinion, but at the time, there was still a lot of excitement and a lot of pleasure with Rogue One. People were very satisfied with that movie. Then we get into The Last Jedi, and a lot of people, and I know you guys like it, but a lot of people felt like it wasn't the Star Wars that we kind of wanted or were used to, and it really seemed to have derailed the excitement for something like Solo, a Star Wars story. Now, that could be something that's not quantifiable. It could just be circumstantial because maybe Solo isn't as good as Rogue One or anything like that. I'm just going to say that I feel like because if The Force Awakens was received extremely well, Rogue One was received extremely well, that led into the hype for The Last Jedi. If The Last Jedi was not conflicting with a lot of critics and fans, if a lot of people didn't find it either a disaster or a masterpiece, I feel like that would have led things to be better for Solo, a Star Wars story, which would have led to Rise of Skywalker. So I do feel like that even though Star Wars may not be as rare as it used to be, it not living up to certain fans' expectations, whether they're warranted or not, is going to kind of ruin it going down the line. I really feel like Star Wars with something like Rogue Squadron, I feel like Rogue Squadron is going to be the biggest test in Star Wars over the past 10 to 15 years. I truly
it's theatrical, because that's the next theatrical thing we're going to get, right?
Yeah.
But as far as that energy feel, I got to be honest with you, not just say, I mean, the movie is different because there's a lot of build up in the movie, the trailers and stuff, but there was an electricity during the Mando season, especially season 2. It was palpable. I mean, you could just feel it. You know what I mean? And people were just so like excited each week. The next one to come out, can't wait to see it, talking about it all freaking week. until the next episode came out. I would say that the Mando, if they can catch that lightning in a bottle and keep that going, that excitement is there and it's palpable, and it really. Now we'll see if that translates to the next theatrical installment.
I don't think it will. I don't think Rogue Squadron can do what Mandalorian did. I think Mandalorian is really well because of word of mouth.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it, and I don't want to diminish the importance of fan reception. The divisiveness over The Last Jedi definitely impacted Solo, and it definitely impacted The Rise of Skywalker. I think a bigger thing that's a lot of people underlook is just the discussion that's going on. With The Force Awakens, it ended on a cliffhanger. That allowed fans to speculate for 2 years about what would happen. And there was so much speculation. Snoke, Rey's parents, what was Luke doing on the island, so many things. And Rogue One, there was a little speculation, but it didn't really matter. Like, there wasn't that much discussion around.
Yeah, and then Rian Johnson intentionally trolls the fans with holding up a sign saying your Snoke theories suck.
Yeah.
Bad form there, man. That was before the movie came out.
It wasn't so much the way I think The Last Jedi handled those discussions, those expectations. It's that The Last Jedi, not only was it divisive, but it ends with no really lingering things to speculate about. Yeah, that Rey and Kylo are going to have to fight again at some point. What else was there to speculate about in episode 9?
Oh, boy. Don't even get me started.
There was nothing healthy to speculate about between episode 8 and 9 until Palpatine's laugh was in the trailer of The Rise of Skywalker. Because it was so hard to guess what could happen next, because The Last Jedi is like a concluding story, really. Like when Empire Strikes Back ended, was Luke really Darth Vader's son? What's going to happen to Han? There's so many things. The Last Jedi, it's a concluding story, so there's nothing really to discuss. And with The Mandalorian, each week, again, that's why I think a weekly release is so much better than a binge release. The discussion is very important for the health of a fandom. And the way The Mandalorian Season 2 ended, there's speculation about what Mando is going to do with Mandalore and how Bo-Katan is going to impact that. But what's the future of Luke and Grogu? How is that going to potentially tie into what happens in Episode 7? So right now, there's a lot of healthy discussion, with Book of Boba Fett too. What's going to happen in the Obi-Wan series? We know Obi-Wan and Vader are going to fight again. How's that going to go? There's a lot of healthy discussion. And with Rogue Squadron, if there's nothing that leads up to it, there's nothing really to speculate about. Unless... So that's why I'm not sure if Rogue Squadron is going to do that well. I think it'll do $1 billion.
You're making me scared about this though, Goldman, because to me it doesn't sound like the movies have a great future. Like I'll ask you guys this straight up: do you guys think? And I'm going to give some preface to this. Rise of Skywalker was the lowest grossing film out of the 3 for the new trilogy. I think Force Awakens did like $2 billion. I can't remember how much did Last Jedi do. Was it 1.6? 1.3. Yeah,
oh, it was 1.5. I could have sworn.
Yeah,
1.37 or something.
Yeah, 1.3 repeating. This one, Rise of Skywalker, did 1.0. Yeah, barely over 1 billion. Do you guys think that Rogue Squadron can pass $1 billion? Because with what I've just said about how I feel like it's having that special moment with Star Wars, especially with something like Rogue Squadron, what seems even more niche to the Star Wars fans. Do you guys see Star Wars being $1 billion box office thing again? And if it isn't, I think that's a really bad sign for the franchise.
It has a potential to, but But Rogue Squadron is not going to be the one that does it.
You can't ignore the impact that COVID's had. Also, we don't know if the movie industry will survive.
Yeah, but honestly, if we're 2 years from now and 2023 is around and we're getting the new Star Wars movie and COVID is still a conversation, we're having some issues. By then I feel like COVID won't be an issue because we're getting back into the re-releases with a lot of these movies, and I would hope by then, especially with the vaccine that we've already had, life will have gone back to normal. Especially with them having Celebration in 2022. Mm-hmm. So I hope that COVID's not a factor with 2023.
I don't think it's so much COVID's presence, but so much it's like legacy, right? Film industries are still experimenting with releasing films on streaming. Is that the direction they're going to go? You don't know. I will be depressed if movie theaters aren't a thing anymore. I will be genuinely depressed.
They will be. I think they make way too much money for them to not do that. Mainly Star Wars. I really cannot see a scenario that Disney goes, we need to do the double release for Star Wars. Half of it on the movie theaters and then half of it on like $30 for Disney Plus.
I hope you're right. I really do.
Geez, yeah. That's the assumption I'm operating under, that they're never going to do a double release.
I think if the 2023 movie wasn't Rogue Squadron, and if it was a story that, say, if it was the culmination of the Mandoverse, I think $1 billion for sure. I'm not sure if Rogue Squadron also isn't. It's just a story that I don't think garners that much attention. It's about fighters, right?
First of all, I will say this right off the bat: any Star Wars movie that doesn't have Jedi Force users and lightsabers is not going to hit $1 billion. I'm not saying you can't have a good movie.
Vader. We saw Vader in the trailers.
The Death Star.
That had Rogue One had Vader in it, bro.
We saw Vader in those trailers. Come on.
I'm just saying that it didn't have Jedi. I mean, that was one scene, and I don't think it's the main.
I think Lunga meant like lightsaber.
I think the Force Awakens hype. It's like the Captain Marvel thing. Would Captain Marvel made $1 billion if it came out like 5 years before Endgame? No. It's the fact that it was riding over the Infinity War Endgame hype.
I want to pop in. I think it's because I like all your answers, and I definitely agree with a lot of you guys said. But honestly, I think it's way too early to tell. I understand the idea of the oversaturation, but if we're getting Rogue Squadron, which we know virtually nothing about. I know there's the idea that it's after Rise, which I've heard things that it is too, but whether that's true or not, we literally have no idea. If Rogue Squadron has to do, for some reason, with any of the Mando characters, like Goldman said, yeah, I think for sure, depending on how they market it, it's all about marketing. If we see Grogu, for some reason, I don't know, if Grogu or Din Djarin shows up in the trailer, that's going to instantly get, I'd say like 15-20% more popularity. If it's just about a new group of fighter pilots, which I can't say I wouldn't prefer, because I do like new stories. I prefer we get new characters and build them up from a fresh, clean slate, instead of relying on fan service and whatnot. I can't see that hitting $1 billion. Do I hope I'm wrong? Yes. But then we got Taika's movie. Say Rogue Squadron doesn't do that good, then we've got Taika's movie, which apparently is supposed to be pretty insane, pretty big, in 2025, is it?
Yeah.
Just 5 years from now. They need to start marketing that movie next year. They need to. I don't know. It's like one. Year? No. We're like 1 or 2 things a year until the year before. I'm talking like 1 or 2. So, not a teaser trailer or anything, but like make a freaking tweet about it. And then in 2023, mid 2023, announce what era this is going to be in.
I think we'll get that in Celebration this year.
Taika's?
Yeah, but I mean, but we're not even. There's nothing to promote yet other than storyboards. I
thought they got most of the.
Taika's not even done with Thor.
Taika's.
No. Maybe I'm thinking of.
Taika's writing the script for the movie right now. That's for sure.
Right. That's where we're at. Is in the writing phase. That's it. I mean, there's nothing to show.
But they don't. But they know what era it's in. They know. I'm not saying release what era it's in now. That was like 2023, like mid.
I mean, they could do a little infographic on StarWars.com, and say,
it's coming.
Teaser. It's coming. This is the era. That alone.
Because I think one of the biggest problems with Solo, obviously, we had The Last Jedi, and then it was released with Endgame, and I think I'm sorry, not Endgame, Infinity War, and another huge movie. But then you also have a lack of marketing. The marketing for Solo was really, really weird, and the trailers kind of sucked. I'll be honest. The trailers for those movies kind of sucked, and I was not excited for the movie. My own dad, who was actually a big fan of the sequels, first movie he saw in theaters was A New Hope, by the way. Okay, he's 1977. He loves Han Solo. He loves Han Solo. He obviously knew this movie was coming out, but he was like, this doesn't look interesting at all. And so I feel like the marketing for Solo, I thought Solo was a good movie, and I thought if they marketed it a lot better, released it at a better time, given some space between TLJ and this, it would have definitely done much better, possibly surpassing.
You don't think all the director and script problems didn't hurt it quite a bit?
It did in a way, but it did in the core fan base. You ask the average person who saw that movie, they would have no idea about that. I'll be honest.
You're talking about general audiences, right?
Which is where most. Let's be real. That's where most of the tickets are. The main hardcore fan base is a percentage of what the overall general. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Is most yes and no for that. Yes, obviously in terms of that, but you ask most people, like, oh yeah, it's coming out then. Oh, now it's coming out here. Oh, cool. Oh, wait. Most people won't be like, what's going on in the insides of Lucasfilm headquarters,
Yeah,
but I think Taika's movie is the one that has that's 2025, right? I don't think Rogue
But he
Squadron.
said it's not even set yet because he's still working on. There's other projects that he's working on, and depends on what happens with those.
I don't think Rogue Squadron will. Someone said between 500 and 800 million. I think that's a very, very fair bracket. But that's disappointing to hear. Think about 500 to 800 million for a theatrical Star Wars release. But we're not. That's coming out in 2 years. 2 years is a long time, but we're also going to get a lot of Star Wars content in between. So it's not like there's going to be a dry state of Star Wars, especially with all these new shows, to where you can build up that anticipation, like, oh my gosh, guys, you hear about the new Star Wars thing that's coming out, right? That word gets around. That hype builds up.
I'm pretty sure we'll have Kenobi, Andor, and Ahsoka, at least those. All before Taika's movie comes out.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot before it, but I mean, it's still the idea of Star Wars not doing $1 billion in the box office is extremely fucking sad. Like I think that's a really sad thing for Star Wars going forward, and a bad sign for the franchise. Shout out to Zach Briggs for the super chat. How would you react if future Star Wars movies featured giant aliens being milked by bearded men?
If it was written by Ryan Johnson, I'd cry tears of joy.
Whoever writes it, I'll fucking throw a milkshake at them and say, try harder.
Green milk.
But
blue is a good one.
Is the blue the better one? I gotta write that down.
I wonder, do you guys think that since Patty Jenkins is making Rogue Squadron, do you think the disastrous reviews of Wonder Woman 84 will impact it at all?
Nope. Too much of a gap there. People are gonna forget about that. I'll be honest. That's just I didn't like that movie. By the way, I really didn't like it.
When Patty Jenkins was announced, that was before Wonder Woman 84 came out. People were excited because they're like, "Wow, Patty Jenkins made the first Wonder Woman, which was a fantastic movie. Let's go. We got a great director." And then it seems like every time Star Wars hires a director for a movie, shortly after something disastrous happens.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi, Game of Thrones.
They always have like a bad movie that was. Oh god, I forgot about David Benioff and D.B. Weiss doing.
We dodged a bullet there because those guys. So much came out about them afterwards.
Don't ever touch on that. I don't care if Ryan Johnson makes it. Do not touch the origins of the Jedi. That is the thing I do not want to see. There's some things mystically that you should not explore. There's some things you should just leave to a mystery for your own interpretation, and that's one of them for me.
That's a good point. I kind of disagree on not approaching it. I'd be fine with it. I don't want these two motherfuckers to approach it in general. But yeah, I think Patty Jenkins is going to be an interesting director because I feel like PR wise she's a very good and safe choice. Lucasfilm can do the whole like we're finally giving a female director her own voice in the franchise and whatnot.
Obi-Wan's coming out first.
Yeah, but this is going to be a theatrical release. I think Rogue Squadron's success is really going to rely on the kind of marketing Lucasfilm does because
very important.
I think a lot of us have definitely noted that over the past 5 years, the marketing has kind of taken a backseat and it has not been as good as it should be.
But you see how they opened to marketing. They opened into marketing with Patty herself explaining why she wants to do this movie and why. And
that was very good.
That was great. Yeah.
That sparked a lot of conversation amongst people, and that spreads. Like, yeah, her dad was a fighter pilot, and it kind of inspired her to make this. I'm like. When I heard that, I was like, okay, I can't wait. It's obviously gonna have a lot of heart and stuff to it. I don't know. Is it possible for Rogue Squadron? Obviously, it's possible, but like, is there like a decent chance that it makes? Because think about it, we haven't had a Star Wars movie in what would be 4 years around. So
it can just Patty's name alone can push general audiences.
Yeah, but then again, there's that Wonder Woman 84, but like. I think time enough will go on with that,
I think it's a fandom thing. I think if we're being real honest here, I think it really relies on how the Star Wars fans feel. Because while yes, we really care about the general audiences, how many people can you go up to in the street and ask, "Are you a Star Wars fan?" and get no as an answer? I don't feel like a lot of people are going to say no. I feel like a lot of people are like, "Yeah, I fucking love Star Wars." Everyone knows what a lightsaber is. But the thing is, when you have something like The Mandalorian, and a lot of Star Wars fans react really positively to it, especially at the ending of Episode 1, you have Grogu's reveal. Star Wars fans were there from day one watching it. I'm sure there was casual audiences watching it as well. But if Star Wars fans, we have so many people who are mutuals who also consider themselves Star Wars fans, but not as diehard as we do. So if we tell them, or we just retweet or whatever, and 5 of the casual people see that, they're going to repost. It's a kind of a rippling of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does that. I feel like we could have that again with Rogue Squadron, but it has to be something that the fans are on board with.
I've got a question. I want to hear you guys' answers. Because we've been talking about sequels and did Disney save or destroy it, blah, blah, blah. Do you guys think if it's announced that Rogue Squadron is set after Episode 9, and that's like it, that's all we know, do you guys think that's going to hurt it in the long run? Because in the short run, yeah, there's going to be people complaining, but in the long run, do you guys think that's going to hurt it at all? Because that would spark a lot of negative reaction from a lot of people, so it's not going to spread.
I don't think it would hurt it. I think I'm indifferent. I think it could help it if they marketed it saying Rogue Squadron is the beginning of our new era of Star Wars. We're just going to start telling stories. Yeah. We're going to start telling stories after Episode 9, and Rogue One's the beginning. If they do it like Rogue Squadron's beginning, if they do it like that, I think it could help. I think, from my opinion, what's hurting this film the most is just the concept of the story. For me, you know what's
gonna help it? Kathleen shutting her mouth, staying in her office, and letting the creatives talk about it. That's what's gonna help it.
I think we look at Rogue Squadron and it feels like an anthology story. Like it feels like a story that should have came out between the saga films. I think if this 2023 movie was the Obi-Wan movie, I think that would break $1 billion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The name alone.
Exactly.
We're finally going to get a good Kenobi.
If it was the origin of the Jedi, I think that would break $1 billion. But just the fact that it's just Rogue Squadron, a story about fighter pilots, it doesn't sound like it intrigues a lot of people unless they attach something to it that really makes it matter.
But even Rogue One wasn't something that a story that I think a lot of people were intrigued with. I think that it came off the hype of The Force Awakens and was marketed well enough that people were like, all right, I'm on board for this, and they were excited for Star Wars. This is where I get concerned with the sequel trilogy reception. Is I don't feel like we're gonna have that same excitement going into Rogue Squadron unless 2022 is the best fucking year ever for Star Wars fans, with all the new projects coming out, all that stuff. If that can lead in the Rogue Squadron in a decent way in terms of building up the hype, $1 billion, no problem. But I think what you were talking about, Palpatine's of it being set after Episode 9, whether that'll affect the box office or not. My unique thought on this is that if it's set after Episode 9, it will have absolutely no impact on the box office. I think people are going to just take it at face value and be like, okay, I don't really care about that. I want it to be in a good story or whatever, good characters. I think, however, if they came out and said this was set during the original trilogy era or a little bit after the original trilogy, people would lose interest immediately. I think a lot of people would be I think people would genuinely be upset with that because they'd be like, a fucking again? We're going back to the same timeline again? I think casual Star Wars fans would be a little bit like 50-50 on it, but I think most diehard Star Wars fans would be upset, and that would have a ripple effect throughout general audiences.
Yeah. I think most people can agree that one of the biggest problems is that we're too centered in that OT feel. As much as I love the sequels, it's really just that OT feel and stuff. And I think, and then we got Solo, then we got Rogue One, and even Mando feels really OT. As much as I love it, it really still feels, it's still that OT-ness, you know.
I want lore. I want to go to the past. The whole KOTOR thing. Okay, that's what I want to see.
If they did a KOTOR movie, that would break
even the High Republic, because I'm liking these books and I've been reading the comics, the Kevin Scott comics, because they have the children comics.
Yeah, the little kid ones. Yeah.
But the Kevin Scott comics, dude. These things are good, and these characters are intriguing, and I want to see them in live action. And it's going back to a period way back. You know, we still get that whole feel of Jedis and you know, and the light side and dark side and all this other stuff, but it's separated from that Skywalker saga. It's separated from all
right. Well, I think what they need to do, we're talking about $1 billion, is what they need to do is they need to make High Republic more universal. And they need to make games out of it. They need to make a TV show, which I know we're getting The Acolyte. And then 2027, boom, we're getting a live-action High Republic episodic film.
Episodic, I think, would be a good route for it to go.
It's going to be a whole new thing, and it's going to be, if you have the build-up of the games, obviously the comics and the books, which is still a very niche kind of target audience, right? You ask a casual Star Wars fan on the street.
So do you hold on real quick? Do you think they're going to do High Republic new stuff, or are they going to make adaptations of what we've getting in the books?
New stuff for sure. I'm not gonna say this as like a scoop or something like that. I'll just say this is pretty much a rumor. But I have heard like some things about like High Republic being an animated show going in the future, like that's being part of the plans. But I don't know where that'd be or anything. But yeah, I think High Republic is part of the future. I do not think it is something that's going to be live action within the next 5 years. I think they're I think they're trying to build a foundation for it. You got it.
Acolyte.
Yeah, the Acolyte's not High Republic though. That's the end of the High Republic, and that's
focusing on. That is true. Good point.
But what if that's them setting it up? I'm telling you, the Feige thing is going to be what kicks off the High Republic movies.
I'm with you
I
there.
agree with
I
that.
can't
I
see it
agree.
going anywhere. But is it safe to say that the Acolyte, they're not going to make the Acolyte and specifically mention, oh, it's right after High Republic, and not have it be setting up this new thing with the High Republic live action? I can't see that happening personally. I can't see them making the show and then that's done and done.
It's at the end though, and plus it's about the Sith. So
Yeah, but what if they're doing an original prequel thing where like this is the original thing, original trilogy, and then they're like, oh, here's the prequel to this, you know?
I think
We're talking about the Acolyte. Yeah,
Yes.
they said the Acolyte starts at the end of the High Republic.
Right, so that would basically be, say, where the original trilogy started in terms of a timeline, and then it's like,
it says like 100 years before the original trilogy or something like that.
No. It's well,
No.
I think it's 100, but it's 50 years.
I mean,
before
like as an analogy,
Phantom
like
Yeah,
if we look at the originals and the prequels, we have the original trilogy first, and then later on, we're like, hey, we're going to show what happened before. I think it'd be interesting if they do that with the Acolyte. We're like, this Acolyte, it's at the very, very end of this era. It's going to show just the last bits of it. And then 3 years later, they're like, hey, now we're going to show the prequels to this, essentially. I think that'd be a very smart way to do things if they do plan on doing some live-action High Republic stuff. Because I bring in a lot of that casual audience who are clearly already invested in Mando and stuff, and we'll get some Mando stuff when around the time Acolyte comes out. And then they're going to be watching Mandalorian, and they're going to be like, oh, Acolyte, let's check this out. It's going to bring in a lot more interest in casual audiences into it. And then 3 years later, boom, you like the Acolyte? Well, cool, we're going to show what happened before.
If this is 50 years before, there's a Dooku youngling running around.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that the Acolyte is going to tie into the prequels than it's going to tie into the High Republic. But I do think Palpatine makes a good point about it tying into the High Republic in the sense that whatever they make in terms of timeline before, if it's set before the Acolyte, I think it's going to loosely tie in to that series. But I think the Acolyte will be kind of like the starting point of like, hey, here's this timeline that we are like part of. Here's the ending of it. We're going to take you through it now with some of the shows or whatever's going to happen.
I really think that those movies and stuff, it's going to be, they're going to use these characters that they're doing. These
I'm with you there.
I think
Avar Chris and Man and all these characters that are Elzar Man, all of them, and
Stellian
Geos. Yeah, all these characters. These are their next bankable characters. These are outside of stuff like Mandalorian and stuff like that. These are the new Jedi characters that they're going to push forward for people to build a new love of canon around, if you will. So they're going to use those characters in the books.
I think now you two know more about the High Republic than I do, but I think we're focused too much on the time period of the Acolyte compared to what the story is actually about. It's going to be about the Sith.
You know why, right? You know why people are fixated on that? Plagueis. That's why people are fixated. That's why people are fixated on it.
My point is that the Sith have nothing to do with the High Republic right now. Am I correct in saying that?
You're right.
Right.
So if their Acolyte is about the Sith, I don't think it's going to be like, oh, there's gaps we need to fill in with the Acolyte that are going to lead, or before the High Republic that are going to lead into the Acolyte. Because Acolyte's about the Sith.
Yeah, I'm going to say maybe there'll be some history because the books are like 400 years before the Phantom Menace, I believe. So
200.
Is it 200? Yeah, it could be 200.
Yeah, originally the rumor was 400, but then it came out that it was.
So the characters that are in these books during the Acolyte time, they'll be legend of them, or or whatever. So
My point is, I don't think the Acolyte's going to be like part of the High Republic storyline.
Right, I don't think so either. But I do think, I mean, there's that rumor that came out from, was it Kessel Run or someone that said that we'll see Revan in some way, shape, or form in this. Obviously, Revan's not alive during this.
No, it's gonna be a Sith holocron.
At this point, I'm with you, Goldman. Geez, the reaction to the KOTOR stuff. But,
which they're gonna be changing some stuff because the Revan holocron, Bane got it, and that's what helped him decide to do the rule of two. And then I don't think Bane passed that to anyone.
That's not really canon right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going by what we have. Yes. So they're going to obviously, have to change that up. There'll be probably other Sith holocrons from Revan roaming around.
Yeah. I mean, Bane used it. He learned from Revan specifically, so they could possibly tie that in. There's so many unknowns going forward at this point, but I feel like we've all kind of agreed that it doesn't seem like Star Wars is ruined, at least from Disney, but like.
It was ruined.
I don't like the word ruined or saved. I don't think it did either.
It's kind of a curious thought of like how different Star Wars would be if George kept it, if he made the sequels, how different our conversation would be around the franchise.
The microbiotic universe? Yeah, Star Wars fans would have loved that.
Yeah, I mean, I sure as hell. There's certain things I would have loved about it, and a lot of parts that I probably would have hated in general. In terms of, I guess the last thing we can talk about, like Star Wars with Disney and going forward from here, um, how impactful do you think the leadership is going to be in this case? Because we have a new CEO for Disney, Bob Chapek. I'll be honest with you guys. I know a lot of people in the park community for Disney and theme parks. Everyone fucking hates Bob Chapek.
He's bad. He's bad news. We're already seeing it with the Marvel side.
He has gotten a lot. People want him out as fast as possible.
What's he doing with Marvel? Because
Well,
I don't
a lot of
know.
it's just
the money, the Scarlett Johansson lawsuit.
Scarlett Johansson
Oh,
thing.
yeah, okay.
He's really budget cut a lot of stuff. He's really up the prices on a lot of things. People just in general. He's very anti-consumer. I mean, he's one of the reasons Galaxy's Edge is not that good.
Mhm.
Is he promised us live interaction? He promised us characters that were going to be in the bar. They're going to be like creatures that would walk around the parks. We don't have shit. All right, there's not.
They cut it all. They cut it all for
There was
cost.
the drone X-wings and stuff that were going to be
Drone
flying around.
X-wings.
Yeah.
There was going to be like creatures that were kind of like what would you call them? The banthas from Tatooine, big creatures like that. We're supposed to be walking around, more character interactions, more characters in general. So many things are supposed to be different. It's such a
That's
fucking shame.
disappointing.
So
Yeah.
do you
I
believe?
still can't
Do
wait
you
to
believe
go
that rumor of that tiff that happened between Iger and Chapek recently? I remember reading something about people were saying that Iger was kind of like telling him, dude, you're going kind of dumb here with some of this stuff, and Chapek basically, I guess, like ranted at him supposedly.
I don't know who that came from. I definitely I can ask people in my area about Disney stuff. I probably won't get anything that high up the chain, except from like one person who also probably wouldn't want to tell me that. But that doesn't sound off base to me. I'll be honest. One thing I have heard about Bob Iger, I've kind of teased it before. You do not fuck with this man. Bob Chapek, you can kind of talk some shit to. I've heard he's kind of easier to talk to. Bob Iger has killed a lot of careers to get to where he was at. That man is not to be trifled with. I would not. If I was working with that man, I'd avoid him at all fucking costs. That guy's dangerous. But hey, he became CEO for a reason. But I guess for the sake of it, I guess I do believe that they probably had a riff. But with that said, I think going forward, do you think someone after Kathleen Kennedy is going to have a major impact on the future of Star Wars? Because a lot of people want Dave Filoni as president. It's not going to happen. I'll let you know right now.
That's
It's
so
not
dumb.
No.
Do you like this guy's writing? If not, then make him president. If you like his writing,
Well, it's not just that; it's just not his trajectory.
Well, he doesn't have
He
any
wants to tell
business.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't have it. It's the dumb. I'm not gonna get into it.
Yeah.
I'll go on for an hour about stupid it is.
I think someone like Michelle Rejwan, which our friend Jason Ward from Making Star Wars said that at the time she was like the most likely candidate to replace Kathleen if they didn't renew her contract, which seems like they have. And after that, I've always wanted someone like Jon Favreau to take over eventually. But do you guys think that's going to have a big impact going forward? Do you guys think that the next Lucasfilm president is going to really impact the future of Star Wars and its longevity, or do you think we've kind of already made our bed?
Well, when does this happen? If this happens 3 years from now, then no, I would say no. But if this happens 10 years from now, then yes, because 10 years from now, we have a completely new slate of things and products that are to be made, right? And to be created. But the next 10 years of Star Wars virtually are all planned out and everything. We've got all the shows that they've announced, and we've got a few of the movies that they've announced. Obviously, we're going to get some far in between. But overall, if Kathleen Kennedy left tomorrow, the same slate of Star Wars, I would say, for the most part, would stay pretty much the same for the next 8 to 10 years. Because they already have
If she
going.
for some reason just suddenly quit, fired, disappeared, no, I think the theatrical, except for Rogue Squadron, I think the theatrical ones could be easily switched, changed, or slated off and changed. That I could see easily.
I meant in terms of like what the content is, what it's like. We're getting like the Mandalorian stuff, and we've got the Ahsoka show. Like, I don't think any of that would change.
Yeah, the
10
Disney
years
Plus
from now,
stuff. Yeah, the Disney
completely
Plus
new
stuff.
slate, so yeah.
What about you, Goldman? Who do you think's gonna fuck this up after Kathleen?
Well, I have no clue who's going to replace Kathleen, but I think it doesn't matter when. Any person who replaces her will have a longer term impact than a shorter term, because it doesn't matter when Kathleen's replaced. There's going to be a slate of stories that are going to come out, whether it's 5 years from now, today, or 10 years from now. Going forward after that,
probably. I think when you're the president of something, that matters, especially when it comes to storytelling. And look at DC. When people hate, was Walter Hamada the president of? Like,
yeah, he's still.
DC?
He's still a Warner, not DC, Warner Brothers. The Warner Media part, but that's going to change too because the whole Discovery thing that happened, and then that one guy who was running Discovery is taken over, but that's not going to happen until sometime next year for it to finalize.
Okay, so yeah, I can't picture how exactly, but I can't imagine it doesn't have an impact. I mean, being a president of something like this, especially in the Hollywood industry, is very important.
Yeah. Geez, I think for Disney being saved or ruined with Star Wars, that's kind of all I had. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up or talk about before we?
What I sent you on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I have that right here. Let's see if I can do this real quick. Screen share.
I'll just say real quick before. Basically, I'm very happy with the side of things and stuff. I am worried that they're gonna choose fan service and cameos over good storytelling, but overall, very happy.
Oh, not that one. The thing I sent you on Twitter.
Oh, the one on Twitter? Oh, yeah. Okay, hang on. Give me a second, because now I got to remove this bad boy.
Don't forget to share your screen.
Yeah. Lunga, I don't know if you heard, but they're coming out with a Star Wars Legos battle arena on Apple Arcade.
Thank you guys. I'm just gonna go chill out in the living room for a few minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
you know that you are legally obligated to play and review this game due to your contract with Chatooine. This has always been a policy that we've had for the past.
I've been watching a lot of the show called Billions lately. There's ways out of this kind of contract, so I'll find it. Don't worry about
it. Oh man. Well, maybe you can get me out of my NDA with Lucasfilm, so I can really reveal everything that Kathleen Kennedy has done. I've seen this woman kill people on the set of Star Wars. But I think that's all we have for today's show. I know at the beginning we said that we're all probably going to end up agreeing on if Disney ruined or saved Star Wars, and I feel like at the moment where I stand is that it's on shaky legs. But we have a good thing at the moment. We have a good forward path right now. We're on a good trajectory going in.
Yeah, that's why I've called, after the success of Mandalorian and everything that's been going on, that's why I said it's at a tipping point right now. It can go either really good or really bad, depending on what they do.
I think that's a very, very fair answer. Yeah.
I would agree.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for joining us here on Chatooine. Make sure you check everyone's channel out in the description below. We have linked to everyone's channel as well as 15% off any Star Wars book you guys get from Inside Edition using the code Star Wars Saga, I believe. So check those out if you guys haven't already. But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you all next week here on Chatooine. What?